Not the sports news is Romy Titus and her guests covering the world of sport from football to athletics, cricket, rugby, UFC, and Dambe wrestling. Live weekdays on omniaudio.africa, 8:30 a.m. Central African Time. Romy Titus is South Africa's leading face and voice on all the sports stories you want to hear about and talk about. Also live on TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook at Omni Audio Africa.
I've got to love my praise singer. I mean, whether I'm in a good mood or not. I mean, the minute he says leading face and then he goes, Dambe wrestling, I'm like, yeah, we're about to have a really good day. It is not the sports news or sport for thought, if you would. The Wednesday edition. A really good cup of coffee, my second for today. Hope yours is as good as what mine is. And we're talking about buying and selling clubs in the Premier League. I mean, if it is that I wanted to go shopping right now, how much would I need in order to do so? And I mean, yeah, when I go shopping for a club and I'm pushing my trolley down the aisles, I guess, of the PSL or, you know, and throwing things into this trolley, surely I can't just be blindly shopping, right? I mean, okay, sometimes I do that when I'm grocery shopping only. But when it is that you're buying a club of this magnitude, sorry, my headset reception is not the greatest this morning. But when you're pushing that trolley down the aisles, right, and you've got to throw everything in, and by the time you hit the checkout, there's got to be some checks and balances as to how you're going to pay for everything, right? Are you going to put it on your credit card? Where's this money going? And then again, what you've bought in terms of a club needs to make money for you. You need to find sponsors. There's people that you're responsible for as well that you need to pay at the end of the month, right? For me, that's always a sad part when I see clubs that are, you know, on a steep downward. How are you going to pay everybody? And anyway, Cash and Sport joins us on the line, so he's going to kind of let us in on this shopping spree. If I wanted Romy's Rangers, what am I going to do in order to get that club? Also not forgetting that we are interactive on all our social media handles. On Facebook, it's Omni Audio, and for the rest of them, it's Omni Audio Africa. Cash and Sport, that's what his name is better known as, Ngobile. He joins us on the line. Ngobile, I'm pushing my trolley down the aisles. I want a status of a club, and I want to call it Romy's Rangers. And I want to be in top flight football also. What do I need to do? Good morning.
Good morning, Romy. There's a couple of factors. The first factor is, do you already have a club? Mm-hmm. If you already have a club, you can, and it doesn't have to be participating in the PSL. Obviously, it probably won't be. If it's in the NFD or even in the Motsepe Foundation Champion or, you know, the third division, it doesn't matter. As long as you have a club, you can essentially exchange the status. So that's a simple financial question to the current owner of the current club that you want to take over, or whose position you want to take in the league. And that's a simple one. In as far as if you don't have a club that exists, but you want a club in the PSL and you want it in the PSL now, it becomes a little bit more tricky. You have a couple of factors that you have to take into account in terms of your registration as an owner with the league. You have to apply you have to apply to purchase this club. Mm-hmm. Once you've agreed the fee for this club with whoever the owners are, then you have to go through the league hurdle, which has some requirements in terms of you being able to prove that you have the money required for your team to participate in the league, for you to pay the players, and any other, you know, costs required. But basically, if you've got the money to do it, you can essentially buy a club. The league does say there's rules and requirements and so on and so on, but at the end of the day, the only real factor is money.
Ka-ching, ka-ching. So if you have it, you can do it.
If you have it, you can do it. So, and let me not say that the added rules. So there are added rules in terms of you have to divulge who your shareholders are, what your shareholding structure is. But that's not a problem. You then also have to be able to set up a youth or an academy team because you have to have junior teams. Remember, all PSL teams have teams that participate in the DDC, which is the development league.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to show that you can support a team in the DDC league and you have a team, in the DDC league. So that's 2. And then number 3, you have to, again, which is the most important one, you have to show that you have the financial means to be able to sustain your club for a season. So you have to provide financial guarantees to show that you can sustain your club. But the other 2 are far easier to do than the financial one. If you can show the finances, the other 2 are easy.
Look, it seems easy, and I'm saying why is because the main thing here is money. If you have deep pockets, you can do it, right? But the deep pockets can also run empty, and we've seen this happen. So you spoke about a season, right? If it is that I have a status, want to buy another status, and have deep pockets, but I only have deep pockets for a season, what happens then? Because you're mentioning the season, and I'm like, shouldn't the trajectory be for more than a season? Because what if things go a little bit wayward after that season? The other thing also that I kind of have a gripe with is, yes, you've got to have that youth structure in place. DDC also 10 years in its existence, going on 11, has really provided some stellar players in top flight. So that doesn't take anything away from that. And I think that works really well. Tick that box. But then what about the women's football as well? I don't see any or every team having that. I think that's also something that should come into the fold. I digress a little bit, but I'm just like, there's so many other factors apart from the deep pockets and the one season that you need to prove yourself for.
Yeah, so to answer the first question around the season, every team in the PSL every year has to provide these financial guarantees to the league. Royal AM, as an example, they did that, but it was found that they were lying in their financial guarantees. And essentially what ended up happening is that their status was they essentially expelled as a result of it. But the lying about the financial, the inability to provide financial guarantees and the shareholding issue only came out after the team had already participated in the 2023-2024 season. So that's one. So every team every year has to provide financial guarantees, and essentially they have to reapply for membership every year. So that's one. In terms of the other factor, the women's league factor or women's team factor, there is no minimum requirement on a PSL club to have a women's team of any kind. There is a requirement from CAF in order to participate in CAF competition. But because not every team participates in CAF competition, the PSL has no minimum requirement. So only teams who have aims and ambitions to participate in CAF competition have to have a women's team. Otherwise, there's no minimum requirement. And I get your question around,
how do you grow the women's how do you grow women's football? If it is not implemented somewhere, if it doesn't become like a hard and fast rule somewhere along the line, then we all just pay lip service.
The challenge is that women's football does not fall under the ambit of the PSL. It falls under the ambit of SAFA. And SAFA doesn't... so this is the problem. All PSL clubs are essentially members of the PSL. The PSL is a signatory or a member of SAFA, right? Mm-hmm. But SAFA doesn't have it as a minimum requirement to say any clubs that are part of the PSL must have a women's team. Unless that rule changes, and this whole women's league or women's football debate has been raging for ages, and this is part of the reason why it stayed as a SAFA function, is that the two bodies don't see eye to eye in terms of SAFA and the PSL, and because they don't see eye to eye, women's football and youth football remain under the control of SAFA. Senior men's football and only senior men's football remains under the control of the PSL. And until the PSL teams are required to have, until SAFA says any league has to have a women's structure underneath it, that will never happen. And it'll continue being a situation where women's football is essentially nobody really cares for it because SAFA doesn't have the money to manage it, nor do they have the structures to manage it. SAFA doesn't have the structures to manage a league. it will remain problematic.
I love this topic, and I think it's definitely one we need to delve deeper on another day, Ngobile, because why not, right? For me, it's all about policy. Policy changes, and that has to change, because if it doesn't change, we're forever going to be here talking about the same thing. But I guess that is a story for another day. I'm still pushing my trolley down the aisles of the PSL. Okay, and I've got status in the trolley, all right? What happens when one status is bought from another? So a super sport, for example, to a Siwelele FC. When I put this status into my trolley, what now needs to be done in terms of name change, staff? Yes, I've got to prove a whole lot, A, B, C, D, E, ratification, I guess, of financials. But I mean, I'm heading towards the checkout. And is it cut and dry? Is it just a copy and paste? Because Siwelele can ultimately become a SuperSport United with just new branding, new face, new name.
Yeah. So, firstly, it just in terms of buying of the straight purchase of a club, just to maybe educate the listeners, you're looking at between 30 and 60 million for any club under. For any club underneath the top five, and then anything within the top five could be more, because those teams generally tend to get into the MTN8 and so on. Mm-hmm. So that's one. So once you've done that, you then have to then go through the process of getting this approval with the league. Now the league says that they try to mitigate the transfer of teams from one province to another. They also try to stop name changes of teams from one name to another. But if a person, because the league views all of these clubs as businesses, as commercial businesses, any person can buy a business and rename it and move it. The league will try to intervene and try to say, yes, it's in the best interest of integrity and history and all of that to keep the league, the team where it is. But ultimately, if you say, I've bought the status, I've bought the team, I want to move it, the league is almost powerless to stop you.
All right.
So you can change the name as you wish and move the team to another province as you wish. Mm-hmm. So that's the second part. The most challenging part for most people buying a status or a team is that they don't realize that if you buy a team or a status, you also inherit all of the costs associated with running that team, all of the contracts, all of the agreements.
All the debt as well?
And all of the debt as well. Everything associated with the club you inherit. And one last bit to clarify is in terms of Siwelele and SuperSport, that wasn't a status sale. Siwelele didn't exist as a club prior to the purchase of SuperSport. Mm-hmm. Essentially, a group of business people went to SuperSport and outright said, we want to buy the entire thing. We don't have a status. We just want to buy the entire club and rename it. That's not a status sale. It's a straight up sale. Mm-hmm. Whereas a status sale is one such thing that happened with Morocco Swallows and Maruma Gallants. Mm-hmm. Maruma Gallants were playing at the second division. Swallows was playing in the PSL, and essentially they swapped places.
Okay.
That's the only difference. So essentially, what I was talking about earlier is that you could get a third division team that all of a sudden has an owner with a lot of money, and he says, I want to be in the PSL tomorrow, and he can swap places with Mamelodi Sundowns because maybe Patrice Motsepe decided he doesn't want to be in the PSL anymore or doesn't want to run a PSL club anymore. That's what a status sale allows you to do.
Would a status sale then also be the Royal AM Bloemfontein Celtic situation?
Correct. Exactly.
How, I mean, I say it seems easy because we read about it all the time. We hear about it all the time. It's been happening all the time. But I mean, just in terms of money, and that's why I brought in policy a little earlier, because if it is that due diligence is not being done, perhaps to the extent that it should, taking Royal AM as an example, how confident are we that when these outright sales or when these status acquisitions happen, that it isn't going to end up being the poster kid of how not to do things, which Royal AM was?
it's almost impossible to do that because we don't have we don't have minimum standards in terms of integrity, police clearances. For instance, there's no requirement to have a police clearance as a director of a PSL club. There's no requirement to provide clarity on whether you're a director or a delinquent director or anything to that effect. For example, Sean Mkhize, I think it was in 2012 or 2014, one of her companies was convicted of fraud. If we all remember, Carte Blanche did a very extensive story about it, and she admitted to it. But she could buy a PSL club because there's no requirements around who you are, your integrity, whether you've been found guilty of fraud, etc., etc.
But isn't that the due diligence, though, Ngobile? Isn't that the? But hold on. Maybe not. Because again, is it just about the money that you kind of forget, like the little things that matter, like integrity, for example?
I agree with you. I think there should be sterner tests with regards to owners, because then you avoid these problems. Royal AM is one example. TTM is another example that's gone by the wayside. Marumok Alliance is another example. There have been multiple owners who have ended up, causing all sorts of havoc because essentially almost anyone can buy a team. The challenge, though, that the PSL will always point out is there isn't an unlimited number of people who want to buy a PSL team. And if you have a situation where a PSL team can't be sustained and someone says, I have the money to do it, and it's an independent business, how do you stop that? My view is that the PSL has all the rights and the ability to say, no, we don't care about that. We want to maintain a higher standard. So therefore, if you want to buy a PSL team, you have to pass through all of these hoops. If you don't, then tough luck. And in my view, what the PSL should be doing is then making the league much more commercially viable, attract sponsors, attract people who want to be in the league, and then you would increase the pool of people who could then potentially buy a club. Then you don't have this problem of a limited number of people who would want to buy a PSL team. So, but at the moment, essentially, the reasoning has always been these are independent businesses, and who are we to stop independent businesses from being sold and bought? True,
fair enough. Also, for me, it's like anybody can buy it, right? If you're interested in purchasing this business, you're able to do so. But also for me, it's almost like the deep pockets of money happen to be in certain circles, that it's kind of hard within, let's take the football circle, for example. It's kind of hard. There's Romy, there's Ngobile. Ngobile is out, but Ngobile knows Romy. So now, okay, Romy's going to be front of house, right? I'm the face, but you the businessman in the back. And isn't that what is happening a lot of the times? Because now, also in this whole Siwelele acquisition, it was the sports minister who came up, who is, in his own right, a businessman, when he takes off the one hat, perhaps empowering somebody else. I'm really just loosely speaking here. But is that not what we are seeing within the circle of football, that, okay, I'm out, but I can help you, and we help each other along, if I make any sense?
No, absolutely. That's exactly what's happening. And if we're going to be frank here, Calvin St. John is the minister's son, who essentially runs the minister's businesses, and through that business they were able to run to purchase the club. So I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to connect 1 and 2 and figure out that essentially the sports minister owns a football club. But be that as it may, I agree with you.
But does he, in essence? Because doesn't his son own it? And by virtue of the fact that they are family, the minister owns it. Well,
yes. No, true, but I mean, it's the same as Tlhopie Motsepe, who is the son of the chairman of who's the son of the president of CAF. He runs the family businesses. The family businesses fund the football club. He is the chairman of the football club. But where does the money come from? It comes essentially out of the businesses owned and established by the father. So, in the same vein, this is exactly the same situation in this one, where Calvin St. John took over the family businesses because his father went into politics, and he can't hold a business position as a politician. But so technically speaking, he doesn't own a club. But realistically speaking, his family owns a club through the businesses that his son runs.
Yeah.
So, there's no real difference. But yes, I understand for semantics and for the optics of it, he doesn't own a club.
Yeah. Look, it's really interesting, and I mean, the intricacies of it all is really what fascinates me at the end of the day, Ngobile. But I mean, this is what's happening, right? And like you said, who's to stop who from trying to buy a status or a club or have one, whether it is in the lower division, where it is in top flight football. But do you think, I mean, what do you think, when it is that South Africa is said to have the best run league in the African continent, what does it say when things like this happen? For me, I'm almost like policy needs to change, stringent measures need to be taken, and we need to take this a little bit more seriously. Whereas at the moment, it just feels like, man, a bit of a circus, if you would, based on the fact that it's not being done properly. And I'm speaking particularly to the Royal AM situation. What needs to be done so that it doesn't look like it's just a circus?
Yeah, that's a difficult one, because while we look at things and the optics are not good, from a commercial point of view, the PSL has continued to grow from strength to strength, and then do we judge the league based on the actions of individuals, or do we judge the league on the overall health of the league? I completely agree with you that, in my opinion, I think the PSL is undervalued and should be generating a lot more revenue. And to do that, you'd have to implement much more structure. You'd have to make sure that for instance, in terms of the owners of the clubs, that they are beyond reproach, and ensure that the test that they meet is stringent, so that when they come in, you don't have the situation where people come in and it becomes almost like a spaza shop situation. So that's the one. And then on the other hand, you allow for teams to you clarify things, because I think while the PSL has done a good job, I think part of the issue with the PSL at the moment is that it's almost like such a closed book. People don't really know what's going on, and it looks a lot more challenging and looks a lot more dodgy, for lack of a better word, than it actually is. The PSL has rules and regulations. There's all sorts of things that are there to empower team owners, but because a lot of people have no idea what these rules are or how it works, it looks like it just becomes a boys' club for the top three teams in the league. I think the PSL it needs a PR makeover in some ways, because it has the best viewership of any sport in South Africa, even beyond the EPL, etc. This weekend, there will be more viewership this weekend of PSL games than there will be next weekend when the EPL comes back. So it's not an issue of the attractiveness of this thing. It's an issue of the optics on the one hand, but just implement your rules. For example, we go and look at this Marumo Gallant situation and the points deduction. The big problem is that they just didn't implement the rules from day one for when it came out that the player wasn't registered. If they just implemented the rules from day one, it wouldn't have been a problem. So I agree with you. I think just implement your own rules. Make your fitness and proper tests mandatory, so that anyone who comes in, is a proper person, and then after that, I think you should be fine. But in my view, I think the PSL is much more valuable than what it seems, and it's and a large part to their own doing.
Yeah. You've hit the nail on the head completely, because it is almost like it's a silo and they exist over there, and you ask questions, but you never really get an answer, and so the silo operates on its own the way it wants to. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't, but I'm just like, it could operate better if it is, like you said, maybe a PR overhaul, because there is just so much value there, So Ngobile, as I push my trolley now with my status acquisition in here, I've taken out some things, I've put in some things. I've got about 50 mil in a check. I don't know if they're going to accept the check at the checkout. Do people still write checks? What else would you caution me? I mean, I want to turn around and not buy a club. However, it's something that I want to do, for example, Romy's Rangers. And what advice would you give me as I'm 2 minutes towards the checkout counter?
Be a politician. Football in this country it really heavily relies on who you know. You have to be able to manage. Apart from having the money to manage it, because it costs a lot of money to run a football team on a month-to-month basis. But you have to understand the politics and how things move and play around. You have to study the league and know your place and understand where things lie, because there are many challenges with South African football. And most of it stems from people not understanding the rules of the game. If you know the rules of the game and you understand how to generate sponsorship, how to generate revenue, keep your nose clean, and try not to get yourself too involved and make yourself the face of the club, I think you'll be okay. The best clubs in the PSL, yes, people know who the owners are, but they're very rarely mentioned or come up in the news, etc., etc. The clubs with the biggest problems, the owners are often in the news. The people often use clubs as a PR stunt instead of actually running it as a business. Get professional people to run the thing for you, and then you'll be okay.
Should I check out?
If you're okay with losing money every year, for most of the clubs, yes, you can check out. But if you're not okay with losing money, I would say put the club back on the shelf and concentrate on a business that can actually generate some revenue.
I could possibly buy more shoes than I could ever dream of. Versus a club. So it's a tough decision, Mobile. It's tough, but always valuable insight. Thank you for the conversation this morning. I think I am going to put the club back on the shelf. I'm not the person to run Romy's Rangers. I think I'm going to stick to media, PR, communication strategy. I think that's what makes me tick.
Yeah, it's a lot less stressful. It is stressful on its day, but not as stressful as running a football club.
That's for sure. Nobile, thank you so much. Cash and Sport there, letting us in on just if it is that you want to buy a club. It's become fashionable. It's almost as if everybody can do it, and not everybody can. And we've seen that happen in the last season. And now it's a brand new season. What is going to happen now, What are we going to see? Are we going to see more clubs fall by the wayside mid-season? Is everybody good to go? And then again, it's not just about that status thing of I own this, right? It's so much more. It's people's livelihoods. It's about blooding in the next generation, because you've got to have the youth structure and that development there. You've got to have money, not just for the season, for many seasons to come, because you don't just want to be a fly-by-night. It's a lot. And so I'm not checking out. I'm not. I'm quite happy chatting to you here. Various topics in sport, meeting the various athletes and people. And so, yeah, I think I'm going to stick to it. This has been the Wednesday edition of Not the Sports News. And it's been fun. If it is that you ever want to throw a topic in for Wednesday's Sport for Thought, please be my guest. Go ahead and do that on our social media handles. Very easy. Facebook, Omni Audio, all the rest of them, which is TikTok, YouTube, as well as Insta. It's Omni Audio Africa. And then let's have good conversation. Till the next episode. Cheerio.
Not the Sports News is Romy Titus and her guests covering the world of sport from football to athletics, cricket, rugby, UFC, and Dambe wrestling. Live weekdays on omniaudio.africa, 8:30 a.m. Central African Time. Romy Titus is South Africa's leading face and voice on all the sports stories you want to hear about and talk about. Also live on TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook at Omni Audio Africa.